It's time to swarm the 402. Welcome to the Nebraska Hawks. These guys are brave. They're Hawkeyes living in enemy territory. Listen, these guys are way past their prime, but they're still Hawkeyes. They're spreading the Hawkeye hype to all of Nebraska. The frost advisory is canceled. Corn Huskers, more like corn suckers. Are you ready for this podcast? Let's go Hawks!
All right, welcome back to the Nebraska Hawks Nest, your Hawkeye oasis located in a Nebraska desert. Make sure to take time out of your day, hit the like and subscribe button, because you know how agitated Jerry gets if our followers don't continue to grow every single week. Luckily for us today, we have from the Big Ten Network, Dave Revsine. Sir, thank you for taking time to come on the Nebraska Hawks Nest today.
My pleasure, Adam. My pleasure, I should say, Adam and Jerry. Happy to be on with you.
We're definitely super excited. We really, with you, you've had a pretty interesting career, Dave, and we really want to start from the beginning. What really got you on the path to your role at the Big Ten Network? What are some of the important roles that you've had along the way, and is this something that you grew up really wanting to do?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'll start with the last part first. Definitely grew up wanting to be a sportscaster. I grew up in suburban Chicago at kind of at the height of, I think, the sportscasters in Chicago being just important figures in the city. When I was a little kid, Harry Carey was the White Sox play-by-play guy. Jack Rickhouse did the Cubs, and then Harry moved across town. The local sportscasters were amazing. You had Johnny Morris, who had been on the 63 Bears. He was at the CBS affiliate. The NBC had Chet Kopic, who was one of the absolute fathers of sports talk and loved to stir things up. And Tim Weigel, who's just a comic genius, was at Channel 7. Then Mark Giangreco came to Channel 5. So, play-by-play wise, anchors, all that stuff. Pat Foley was doing the Blackhawks, as he still is, in his last year. So it just felt like kind of there was a sportscaster heaven. And I was one of those kids. I was 5 or 6 years old, and I would literally write down the lineups and turn down the sound on my little black and white TV and announce baseball games in my room. So, I mean, literally at age 6, I started doing that. So, yeah, I always, kind of grew up wanting to do this. Did some other stuff professionally for a couple of years out of college before I just decided to kind of give it a shot, that I would, maybe hate myself if I didn't make the effort to see where sportscasting might take me. And did a small market gig for a couple of years in Texas in a town called Sherman. I went from there to the Quad Cities. So I was I lived in Davenport, but worked in Rock Island. I was at the CBS affiliate in the Quad Cities for a year, and then went from there to ESPN. When they launched ESPN News, I was one of the original hires for that. There were about 13 or 14 of us who were hired in that group. Myself, Greeny was part of that group. John Butchiegross is still there. Other than those two, I don't think anyone's still there. David Lloyd came not too long after that, but we had a really good group. And then you just kind of worked your way through. And I made it known when I was there that I really had a passion for college sports. And so got some opportunities, whether it was, kind of pregame, halftime for college basketball, and the wrap-up show on Saturdays on ESPN. That kind of became, for college basketball, that kind of became my little domain. And then doing the college game day radio show, which I did for 6 years, first 3 years with with Mel Kiper, and then the last couple of years with DiNardo and Todd McShay. And then when the Big Ten Network launched, they kind of started recruiting me and kind of made this pitch of what I want to come home and have a chance to head up this network and be their lead guy. And I honestly didn't think I was particularly interested. I really had no intention of leaving ESPN, but I came and I interviewed with them and kind of realized it would be a great fit. And so I was their first pioneer hire. That was in 2007, fall of 2007. This is our 15th year of the Big Ten Network. Kind of hard to believe.
Yeah. So, Dave, our crack research staff, you were from Chicago, but you went to Glenbrook North, correct?
I did.
And our correct research staff came up with information, and we pay them a lot of money to come up with this information.
Tons.
But Glenbrook North
budget operation, so I'm not surprised.
It is.
Yeah.
And, Glenbrook North High School, for those who are not familiar with it, was the scene of two famous movies back in the 80s, known as The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Is that correct?
It is. So The Breakfast Club was based on Glenbrook North. John Hughes went to Glenbrook North. So that's kind of why there is the Glenbrook North connection.
Wow.
So The Breakfast Club was based on a Saturday detention concept that they had there when he was in school. It was not actually filmed at Glenbrook North, but Ferris Bueller's Day Off was filmed at Glenbrook North. And it was while I was in school. It was filmed my sophomore and junior year. I know dozens of people who were in the movie as extras. I say somewhat ironically, on the day that they were one of the days that you had to be there to do the shoots, I was in a play and we had play rehearsal. And so I couldn't go, but like anyone could be in it. Like you could have gone and been an extra. Like there's a scene where they're running during a gym class in the background. So they were doing that after school one day. There's a couple scenes in hallways where they used extras. So yeah, and not only that, but then my senior year is when it came out, and we got the first North American screening was for Glenbrook North High School only.
Wow.
And it was pretty cool. And to think that it has become like this, I mean, and like the water tower, where the water tower in town said Save Ferris, that was the water tower in Northbrook. They literally painted Save Ferris on it.
Really?
So it's pretty cool. That's definitely one of the claims to fame, along with John Shire and Chris Collins being Glenbrook North grads, two Mr. Basketballs. But I would say, Ferris Bueller's Day Off is probably our greatest claim to fame.
So were you more apt to be in detention, or were you more apt to just skip school and not get caught?
No, I was actually, this won't surprise you. I wasn't a detention guy. I was pretty straight arrow.
Yeah. So you were like the Anthony Michael Hall character.
I was,
that got in detention by accident. Yeah.
Yes, I would have been the guy who was really embarrassed to be there.
Well, if I can, just one more question, then that was our fun. But you also came from Northwestern University, and something I guess I've ran by some people. I thought maybe I'd lived under a rock, but what is it about Northwestern University's broadcasting school and sportscasters? You mentioned Greeny, you mentioned Michael Wilbon, Kurt Menefee, Rich Eisen. The list goes on, and I guess educate us more. What is it about Northwestern and the way they can, their school and specializing in sports broadcasting, especially?
Well, what's interesting in my case, Jerry, is I did not major in broadcast. I was not in the School of Journalism or the School of Communications. I was in Arts and Sciences. I was a history major.
Okay.
But I worked at the radio station. And the radio station, even then, I mean, it was unbelievable. So, like the group of guys, Greeny didn't do it, which I always give him grief for. Like, I literally have no idea who he was. Never knew who he was at school. He was 2 years ahead of me. Not only did I not know him, no one knew him. So, quietly plotting his takeover of the sportscasting world has since become one of my extremely close friends. But we did not know each other. But Josh Lewin was at the radio station when I was there. Jay Adonde was at the radio station. Glenn Geffner, who's the voice of the Miami Marlins, was there. I mean, it was really an amazing group. So I always felt like I was maybe like the sixth best guy at my college radio station. And I think that was part of why I had some trepidation early kind of post-college of whether or not I would go into it. Because I really felt like I'm not the best guy at my college radio station. Like I'm really going to be able to do this professionally. As to why, Northwestern's been so successful. I mean, Brent Musburger obviously was one of the big guys. Wilbon, you mentioned it. It's really an amazing list. I don't know. I mean, it part of it just builds on itself, probably similar to Syracuse, right? Where then people who are interested in it go there. Obviously, Medill's a great journalism school. So for those who are in Medill, I do think that's part of it. And a lot of those people are communication, radio, TV, film, whatever it might be. We had a great college radio station, and we did all the games. I mean, so when I was at Northwestern, in my 4 years there, Northwestern won 6 football games total. Mm-hmm. I believe it was 4 conference games, 3 of which were against Wisconsin. Right? Like people forget how bad Wisconsin was.
Mm-hmm. That's so true.
Half the football wins in my 4 years were against Wisconsin, and they won 6 conference basketball games total. There were 3 years of 2 wins and 1 year of 0 wins. So needless to say, there wasn't like a bunch of people beating down the door to do the games commercially. They did have a commercial station which covered them, which they had not in the 70s. In the 70s, late 70s, the student radio station was the only station that covered Northwestern games.
Really?
In the early 80s, they got a TV deal, or a radio deal, I should say. And the greatest thing was the radio deal was initially with a station whose call letters were WAIT. That was the call letters of the radio station. So it was highly symbolic. But even when I was in school, so by the time I was in school, I think WGN was doing the games. And obviously it's a blowtorch station that Iowa ended for that matter. So it was better. But we had a lot of games where we were the only ones who did them. Like I did a game from Cameron Indoor Stadium at Duke where they did not send, like the commercial station, WGN didn't broadcast it. So we got a lot of opportunities to do games. I don't know whether that had anything to do with why people would come there, but we really ran like a great operation. We got a deal going with American Airlines where they flew us to do games in exchange for us giving their, putting their name on the pregame show. And so it was pretty cool. And the coaches were great. Bill Foster was the basketball coach. He was an unbelievable guy. Really treated us like pros. Francis Pay was the football coach, treated us with a lot of respect too. So I had a really good experience, even though the teams we were covering were dreadful. And I think it made you better. It made you had to do your research. You kind of had to know a lot about the other team too. And you had to have a good sense of what was going on throughout the league. So it was an incredible opportunity. But as to the why, I don't know, other than I guess I would just say it's a really good school and it has a good reputation for that. And I think, much like Missouri, much like Syracuse, some of these other schools, it just kind of perpetuates itself.
Well, Dave, as much as we love Coach Ferentz at Iowa, he's not the most dynamic interview out there. We all know that. Coach knows that. It's well documented. Out of all the interviews that you've been a part of or done yourself, what are some of the coaches that you get the most excited to be able to interview that are the most engaging and most entertaining guys out there?
Well, I will say about Kirk, Kirk is a wonderful human being.
Oh, he is.
A great guy. And I understand he's not, and like you say, he would be the first to acknowledge, it's not always the highest energy or whatever. Man, he is a great guy. Yeah. He has been such a gentleman and such an unbelievable pleasure for us to work with. One of the things I will say, and I will eventually answer your question, but one of the things that's been really cool about this job that I did not understand when I went into it, just kind of accidentally dawned on me along the way. These schools are really important to the fans, and you guys certainly are keenly aware of that. And so you really become, I think in our role, you become a steward, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. You are, for many fans who are, particularly those who are kind of displaced or away from their school, you're an Iowa fan who lives in California, and you don't get a chance to go back to Iowa City more than once every year or two. The Big Ten Network has become a lifeline for these fans. Mm-hmm. And everywhere that I go, people will come up to me and really thank us for the job that we do. And I did not see that coming. And it's I see it as an incredible responsibility. And representing, kind of our network and to conduct ourselves in a way that, puts our best foot forward, that understands these schools, understands their history, the fan base, what's important to them, like all of those things. And then the other part of that is that you feel like you have a kinship with the program. And so I'll use Kirk as an example, and that's kind of why I went down this road. He's been so welcoming to us. Like he just, and of course, we've had the same analysts the entire time, which is amazing and pretty much unheard of in this business, right? Jerry and Howard have been there the whole time. Joshua has been with us now for the last few years. But, we're there at camp every year. They see how hard we work to get the information that we need and to understand, okay, like who's on the two deep, and to ask good questions and understand, okay, well, who is Arlen Bruce and who's Keegan Johnson? Why might these guys be important players this year? That I take that as responsibility. We only have 14 teams to know, but the flip side of it is how welcoming they've been. So in kind of a long-winded way of getting to that, we've just had incredible experiences with the coaches in this league. Who are the best interviews? I don't know. I mean, you got we've had a lot of fun guys. We haven't really had anyone who's treated us poorly. And I just think that's kind of been to me, that's been the bigger thing. Izzo's a great guy. I think about like the coaches I love to sit down with in the league. Certainly he's really high on the list. I love Fran. He's a straight shooter. He's funny. He'll give you a ton of time. You go to shoot around and Fran will sit down and run through everyone on his team and give you kind of the unvarnished truth. I loved Richard Pitino. I still do. Again, there's a guy who came into it thinking, well, I don't know, his dad, I'd done a couple of his dad's games and his dad wasn't very forthcoming. And I never really felt like he was all that interested in chatting with the ESPN announcer. But man, Richard's just over the top great guy. Fred Hoiberg's unbelievable. I can just go down the list. I mean, it's like there's just been very few guys who have been difficult to deal with. And it's been an incredible pleasure for me on that front.
Yeah. Well, I don't want you to speak highly of Fred Hoiberg because when I played varsity basketball in Des Moines, he ruined my senior night as a sophomore. So
wow.
They destroyed us, won the league title, and I, on senior night, and I had to, but anyway, Dave, on that note though, I mean, when it comes to the Big Ten Network and your relationship with the coaches, how much is that as a two-way street? Because it's not, you're not just, but I mean, for them, it's got to be a recruiting tool as well. I mean, having this network television coverage that you do. So, I mean, how much of a two-way street kind of partnership is that as your job progresses and moves along?
I think that's a big part of it. I will tell you, Jerry, I think that's really evolved. So I would say, like, at the beginning, I think there was some suspicion. And first of all, if you remember, the first year was very challenging, right? Because we weren't on every cable provider. And so there were games that would be on, and then fans were saying, well, we can't see the games. And so it was a challenge. And everyone kind of had to be this united front saying, hey, this is going to work out. And this is for the best thing for the league in the long run. And but so that first year they were hearing it from fans, particularly the places where the deals weren't done, the cable deals. And then they didn't really know what to make of us. So I think I felt like I had to build trust. And I worked really hard, partly with the coaches, partly with the sports information staffs. But again, getting to know the athletic directors when it was possible, getting to know university presidents, just kind of everywhere we went, trying to help people understand that it was a partnership and that while we were, hey, we need to be critical. And if a team's not good, we're not going to pretend they're good. But that we do have the best interest of the league. Like when the league succeeds, we succeed. And we want to tell good stories. And even if you have a bad team, you might have a good story and tell us who those kids are. I think the Journey's been a huge part of that. Which is a program that I feel incredibly strongly about. Bill Friedman, his staff do an amazing job. And again, like that, hey, it's a partnership. And so I do feel like that two-way street, the schools that have recognized it, and I think we're really at the point where everyone has. I think it took some schools longer than others, and probably some schools felt like they could capitalize off of it more than others, or maybe needed it more than others at the beginning. But now I think everyone sees the power of the network. Anyone who wants to get it can get it. I think that's, one of the great things is, again, it does connect people. So we really get incredible cooperation from the schools. But again, we've worked really hard at it. And it's something I think about constantly is kind of how I'm representing the network and just helping these coaches and players and everyone understand that this is their home and that we are their partner.
So, Dave, you mentioned the show BTN The Journey, which is one of all the Big Ten fans' favorite shows. I don't think too many people ever miss that when that comes out. But the one thing that fans of the Big Ten have said pretty consistently about the Big Ten Network is we'd love to see more original programming from the network. What are the odds or likelihood that there's going to be more original programming down the pipeline in the coming years? Something like Big Ten Treasure Hunter that I'm a little biased, but I hear constantly from people that they missed that show and loved watching it. Is there any chance a show like that could come back or anything down the pipeline soon?
Well, I'd say this, Adam, I'm not in programming, but I do know that the new president of the network, Francois McGillicuddy, is an incredible guy. He is really bullish on original programming, and it's storytelling is a huge tentpole for him, for the network. And again, as I mentioned, Bill Friedman earlier does a great job. We've had some documentaries that have been really well received. Campus Eats continues to be really popular for us and is debuting. I think it's its 4th season now. So they're constantly thinking of different ideas and new ideas. Treasure Hunter was a really good show for us. And as to whether or not something like that will come back again, that's not really my domain. But we are kind of, I think there is a keen understanding that there's an appetite for that. And again, a lot of those shows, I mean, one of the great things about those shows is they can run forever. I mean, they're really great programming kind of, hey, in the middle of the day, you can put one of those on and people do watch them. I mean, I look at the ratings and it's like, wow, it's great. How much people like it. So there's a balancing act. I mean, live events are always going to be the most important thing that we do, right? I mean, that is kind of the reason for our existence is those games. But then the shoulder programming around it, whether it's original programming or studio programming, that stuff's really important. And it's a great way to drive people to the network. My area is much more the studio programming, but definitely understand the importance of the originals as well.
Yeah. So, Dave, I got an idea for a show I'd like to pitch you. And if you want to take it to your people, I think you guys should do a show on podcasts of the Big Ten operating from rival territory.
Oh,
I don't know. Maybe there's more out there, but I mean, we'll volunteer. Adam's the face of the venture. I mean, he'd fit really well in one of those episodes. I think we could be the pilots. So
that sounds like gold.
It does, yeah. I do think that part of what is really cool in this day and age, and I talk a lot with students. Obviously, you guys are far older than that, but students trying to break in. Kind of that's one of my passions is talking to young people about this business. Yeah. And one of the things I said is, I mean, the barriers to entry are so much more minimal than they used to be, right? I mean, it used to be that you had to do what I did. You had to drop everything and move to Sherman, Texas, and say, okay, I'm gonna start trying to work my way up in this business. And I do think it's great that there are a ton of podcasts now. There are so many different opportunities for people who are passionate about these teams to show their passion and share it with other people. And that is it's amazing. It's an incredible development. So maybe it's not that narrow and focused, Jerry. Maybe it's just podcasts.
You guys just keep talking to us every week because nobody else is, Adam and I are the only guys that aren't smart enough not to do one from the rival territory.
Good thing the barriers have been removed. We probably would have blown an ACL trying to jump those barriers.
But seriously, I always, David, you and I are about the same age. And so, one of the big trivia questions, and people may not necessarily realize it, one of the big trivia questions, what was the first video played on MTV? And, and that's always, most people probably don't realize you uttered the first words on the Big Ten Network. I mean, you were the first words. I believe it was, basically the introduction to the network when it came on. But what were your first thoughts when it was pitched to you? I know you said it was an opportunity to be, to come back. But what were your first thoughts when they were coming forward? Because I think the Mountain West was the only network that had a conference only. What were you thinking when they pitched this to you? And what were your thoughts about a conference only network?
Well, again, I mean, just to be brutally honest, right? So my contract was up at ESPN. I was going on my 4th contract. I wasn't crazy about some aspects of the offer they made me. And so I was like, I'm just going to see what else is out there. And so the Big Ten Network had reached out. And I was like, great, I'll go talk to them. But I really went into it just with the notion of I just want to get an offer from these guys. And then I'm literally 10 minutes in the conversation. And they start pitching. And the guy I met with originally was Leon Schweier, who was our original executive producer. Just a super guy who sadly passed away here in the last few months, but swam at Purdue, really an amazing guy. And we're 10 minutes into this lunch that they had flown me out for. And I went from kind of going, well, I'll just try to get an offer from these guys to, wow, this sounds unbelievable. Like he started, first of all, I didn't realize I was the only person they were talking to. And, you know, that there was like this lead role and that they wanted me to play that role. I didn't realize there'd be play-by-play involved. I didn't understand there was a 24/7, 365-day a year network. Like I kind of thought it was more along the lines of what they were doing with that kind of ESPN regional that, you know, where the games were before, you know, kind of that old Raycom and all, you know, all those syndicated games. Like I guess I just didn't know what it was. And so once he explained what it was and the role they envisioned for me, I went very quickly. I tell this story a lot. Was they were in a temporary office on Michigan Avenue, not where we are now. So I went to lunch with him. We walked back to the office. We talked for about 10 or 15 minutes. And I was flying back to Connecticut the next day. I went to see my parents after that. But so I was supposed to fly back to Connecticut the next day. And I went to Water Tower Place right there on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. I went into one of the big department stores and I went to the women's section, like the women's dresses, so that no one would have any idea who I was, which maybe is too stereotypical, right? But I was like, who in this area over here is going to have any interest in broadcast television sports? And I went over to the corner. I called my wife and she says, hey, how you doing? We got 2 kids, three kids at home. 2 infants, they're crying, whatever the background. I said, hey, I know this might catch you off guard, but I think I kind of like this job. And she pauses for a second and she says, that wasn't the plan. I know, but let me tell you about it. I think it'd be really good. And she bought in and she's been, unbelievable. But we were really happy in Connecticut. We liked it there. And so yeah, I think but I quickly realized it was a great fit. And then I came back out a few weeks later and had dinner with Mark Silverman, who was the first president of the network, who's just the best, and Commissioner Delaney. And they really sold me on it too. And kind of shared their vision for what it could be. And I kind of came out of that like, hey, I'm going wherever these guys are going. These guys are amazing. And and I had high expectations for it. I don't think you leave a job like the one that I had if you don't believe that the one you're going to is going to be good. Mm-hmm. But it has even exceeded my expectations. It's just, I had no idea that it would kind of really revolutionize college sports television in a lot of ways. It really has. And obviously the fact that everyone has all the, power conferences have followed suit. And I guess other than the Big 12, but there are 4 college sports networks total now, conference networks, and just kind of the way that it's changed the landscape. So I don't think I anticipated that, but I thought it was the right move for me. I never had a moment of hesitation. One of the things that was really weird was when it was announced that I was leaving, typically when you leave ESPN, certainly in that day, that was it. They kind of, it's announced and you pack up your desk and someone walks you out. But they did not do that with me. I had another month left on my contract, and it was a while until I was going to start. And they were like, we'd love to continue having you on the air if you're comfortable with that. And, don't want to make this acrimonious in any way. And so they were great. So I went back and I was on ESPN for the next month. And so, you're on campus there and I have a million people that I love there. And I loved the people there. And you'd run into people, and I hear you leaving, but I never had a moment where I was like, am I making the right move, or is this the right thing? I was just at peace with it. It just kind of felt like it was the right move at the right time for me. And yeah, it's just worked out great.
Dave, just from a personal standpoint, I really want to get your thoughts on conference realignment in regards to the Big Ten. There's a lot going on right now. Things have obviously calmed down a little bit since the season started, but with Oklahoma and Texas eventually moving to the SEC, just from your personal experiences and being a lot with your, ear closer to the grindstone than the rest of us are, what are your thoughts on potential expansion for the Big Ten? Do you feel like that's something you think is going to happen down the road, or do you really see with this alliance that all of us are going to stay put and stay pretty similar to what we are now?
Well, you never say never, Adam. I mean, I think the one thing that we've all learned, those of us who follow college athletics, is none of us have any idea what's going to happen. However, I would say my sense is that it's pretty stable right now from the Big Ten's point of view, just because the way that this landscape is right now. You have to add someone who brings more value than what you have to pay them to be in your league. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of money in the Big Ten's case. It's a lot of money in all of these leagues' cases. And so is there a school out there that would bring you an extra $60 million a year in revenue or whatever it's going to be in this next contract by the sheer nature of them being in the conference? I don't think so. I don't think there's anyone that we would know of. Now, again, things could change. And so who knows? But I think the alliance allows you to expand without expanding. I think what it does is it gives you a better TV package. It allows you to play these ACC games and these Pac-12 games. And at this point, really, it's about what you go to the marketplace with. What is the schedule that you're selling to whoever these TV partners are going to be? And if you can show them, not only are we going to have these really good conference matchups, but, oh, hey, every once in a while, we're going to have Ohio State play Clemson or Michigan play Oregon or, whatever it's going to be. Those games matter. Those games bring value. So I think right now that's my sense. I think originally, look, Commissioner Delaney, I mean, we were on the air with this, whatever year it was, 8, 9, 10 years ago. I lose track of time because I'm getting so old. But, when he came on our network and we announced that scheduling alliance with the Pac-12, and at that time, he said, this is a way to expand without expanding. And then it fell through, mainly because Stanford and USC were already playing Notre Dame. And they felt like, okay, we're playing 9 conference games, and we're playing Notre Dame. Now you're telling us we might have to play Iowa or Ohio State or whoever it is. Like, oh, that's too much. So, but, this is a different day and age. And so I think now there's an understanding that, okay, like strategically, this kind of makes sense and it positions their league better. And so my sense is that's where it's going. But again, if I woke up tomorrow and someone told me that there was going to be expansion, I don't think anything would surprise me anymore.
So Dave, from a layperson perspective, like us fans in the Big Ten, people always say, well, if you do expand, it'll be this team because of this or this team because of this. How heavily, can you elaborate? How heavy is, like in the Big Ten, the additional TV sets? I know that was a big discussion with Rutgers and Maryland when they came on because they were getting these huge markets. As the Big Ten maybe looks to expansion, how heavy does the TV market weigh into their decisions, do you think? Or, do you know? Well,
again, I don't really think it's not totally my domain. I would say you expand for different reasons, though. I would say, like, and again, I know I'm on an Iowa podcast, but you guys live in Nebraska. You understand the power of Nebraska's brand and what Nebraska has meant in the landscape, particularly of college football through the years. And obviously, I haven't had a great run here recently, but I still think there's a ton of value there. And so that wasn't a play that was about television sets. That was a play that was about a brand and about strengthening your league and getting, one of the 10 winningest programs of all time into your conference. Rutgers and Maryland probably was more about, and I don't know if it's specifically about the television stats, but like it is about being in that area of the country where the population base is growing and that is a really significant area in terms of, potential students. I just say, I would use the example like my cousin lives in New Jersey. His daughter's a freshman in Illinois. I really think there's something to that. Like there felt like a connection now. I go there because Rutgers in the Big Ten, maybe not. I'm not going to say that's why she went there, but it doesn't seem as far out there now. I think as it might have seemed, and I think it helps recruiting certainly for all these schools in terms of sports, right? There are a ton of players in New Jersey. There are a ton of players in the the DMV area, DC and Maryland and Virginia. And so I do think on a lot of different levels, like that makes sense above and beyond how many additional television homes the Big Ten network's in, or how many more homes you have potentially for your games. I just think you need to be in places where there are more people. And so I do think that move made sense for that reason, whereas maybe a Nebraska move makes sense for different reasons.
Sorry, Adam, I'm cut you off real quick here, but
No.
Could you see the Big Ten going West Coast? Could you see a coast to coast footprint in the Big Ten potentially down the road, or do you think that's
I guess again, I just never say never. I just think it just depends where the rest of the world goes. I think right now there's still at least somewhat marginally a regional component to this. There's certainly a regional component in the Big Ten. Big Ten isn't all contiguous states. Some other leagues, maybe that's not totally the case, but that is the case with the Big Ten. And so does the Big Ten feel that being in all contiguous states is important? I mean, it seems like right now it does. Were the landscape to shift, could you get into a place where maybe it's not as important? Maybe. But again, no one comes to me for long range planning.
Well, maybe they should, Dave.
Yes. They need to get on that, Dave. Come on, we want to hear your thoughts.
Excel spreadsheets they really need to see, Adam. Yeah.
Oh, I'm definitely, and I have like the greatest Jim Delaney story of all time. I don't know. I'm like, maybe I should wait to share this one off the air, but it's pretty fantastic. He is a great guy. So I just, long story short, we won this really high level package when Iowa made it to the Rose Bowl, and we were staying in a hotel that about $1,300 a night hotel. Little out of my price range. Out of my price range.
Yeah,
so
you're normally 1,100 and on down, right?
Yeah. Just a few hundred over the cap, and then I walked. And so they have these beautiful facilities at this hotel, absolutely beautiful. I'm taking full advantage of these. I'm going down to the gym. They got a steam room. I mean, it's the most beautiful thing ever. I walk into the steam room, and the one person sitting down in the steam room, Jim Delaney, sitting there hanging out. And I said, "Mr. Delaney, how we doing, sir?" You could see the disappointment on his eyes that somebody recognized him. And I was like, "Sir, very nice to meet you. Don't worry, I'm going to totally leave you alone." And I said, I'd ask you if we could take a selfie right now, but I think I know the answer to that question.
It just seemed like that's a little bit over the, right?
That's
over the line.
Yep. Yeah. He said that might not really go well for me. A picture of me and another shirtless, sweaty guy going out on social media probably wouldn't go well. So, and then he realized he forgot his glasses, so I had to go into the weight room and help him find his sweatshirt that he wore down there. So, great story.
So lightening in this, that's a good way to start lightening it up, Dave. But kind of on a lighter note, you guys, you make it to Iowa City. What are some of your favorite places? I don't want to put you on the spot as far as your favorite places in the Big Ten, because you probably don't want to leave anybody out. But like when you go to Iowa City, what are some of your favorite things to do or places to hang out, restaurants to eat? What is it that Iowa City makes you think of?
Well, I love Iowa City. And everyone who goes, it was interesting, like talking to some national media who were there for the first time a couple weeks ago, like Pat Forty was on our show, and he was saying, Matt, he just had an unbelievable time there and didn't really understand what a great town it is, and then how awesome Kinnick is. So, I mean, to be there, to be in Iowa City is to like it, and I really enjoy it. As to where we go, Joseph's for steaks, really good, right? I've still never been to the Iowa River and Power. Am I getting that right?
Okay.
Never been there. I've heard that's really good. I go to the Hamburg Inn. I've probably been there, I don't know, half dozen times. I love that. Great little greasy spoon. I love all the campaign stuff that's there. I just think that is super cool. So yeah, I'd say that those are probably like the biggest places that I've gone through the years. But there's I think there's no lack of great restaurants, and I love walking the pedestrian mall down there, and usually stay at the Marriott in Coralville. Really good hotel, though I got to tell you, the phone service at the back of the hotel isn't the greatest. You want the room facing the front. But the fact that I probably spent, I don't know, rough estimate, 40 nights in that hotel.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's
You know
crazy.
it well.
Like, some of these hotels, when we're we're on the bus tour, so we're there at least 1 or 2 nights every year, and then I'll go to a basketball game or whatever it is. So, yeah, I know these towns pretty well at this point.
That's great. Well, Dave, we know you got a busy schedule and got a lot of things going on. We appreciate all the time that you gave us today. And we had an absolute blast talking to you. You had some great stories and it was a ton of fun. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, Adam, Jerry. Thanks a lot, guys. Really enjoyed it.
And tell the team as well, you and Howard and Jerry. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, you guys are basically the post game now for Big Ten fans, and so it's a pleasure watching. You guys bring a lot of information to us, and I mean, you guys are the go-to. So tell the team we really appreciate what they're doing.
I'll say one thing. I was actually talking to one of my bosses today, and we were talking about the chemistry that group has, and of course, Joshua's been unbelievable too. It's really fit in incredibly well. And part of it is just a function of spending a lot of time together. I mean, you guys think of that bus tour, right? So we do that in the preseason. Other than last year with COVID, we didn't do it. But so we've basically done it 14 times. It's about 18 days on the road. So, I mean, you guys can do the math here. That's more than a half a year we have spent together on the road touring the Big Ten. And that's before like the season even starts, right? So, I mean, I've probably spent close to a year of my life with those guys. So it's crazy, right? So we've gotten to know each other really, really well. And they're two, Jerry and Howard, are incredibly important people in my life and really good friends. And again, as I say, Joshua's fit in so seamlessly too. But I hope it comes across on the air how much we like each other and the passion that we have for this league and for its fans.
Well, since you guys always get to spend so much time together, make sure to not forget about the show that Jerry pitched for you. This whole podcast thing. It's a gold idea. I told you.
If you guys threaten to walk if they don't do this show, I think that would carry some weight. I know you're not actually in charge of programming, but
yeah, come on, Dave.
We gotta have this podcast in rival territory. So.
Podcast in enemy territory. Season 7, episode 13. Yeah.
Hey, if you need original content, we're here. All right. All right, Dave. Thanks again. We really appreciate it. All right. Thanks for coming on, Dave. Go Hawks.
Take care.
My pleasure.
Yeah.